Hello, my lovelies. Yes, this is a different outfit. My fabulous guest today will introduce himself in a second. Why are we doing this? Why are we wearing this? Why do we look like this? We're talking about this dwarves and elves, about their complicated history, and we'll give you a few examples of feuds and friendships. And I think this will be a really good one. But to come to my fabulous guest, introduce yourself, Will.
Well, my name is Will. Online, I go by Varking or Varking Runesong, depending on where you see me. I moderate the Discord for Fellowship of Fans, the OneRing.net Discord. I moderate the main subreddit for the actual show, LOTR on Prime. But I'm all over the place. If anybody wants to talk Tolkien or especially dwarves, feel free to reach out, and I am 100% here for it. It's awesome to be here. I've watched a bunch of your videos. I also try to study the last 3 or 4 just to see what kind of hard-hitting questions you ask, so I'd be prepared. But
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for having me on.
thank you for coming. And people who know my channel know I mean, relax, people. This is mostly me just joking. That I, don't like dwarves that much, but actually,
A little bit.
yeah, no, but reading into it, this is mainly making fun of it. But no, reading into it, they're epic dwarves, they're epic dwarven cities. We will talk about them, Belegost, Nogrod, especially fast age dwarves are so amazing. And yes, there is a complicated history between me and you.
Yes. A lot of
um,
misunderstandings, I think.
yeah. And how you cheated my dad. Hashtag, Thingol did nothing wrong. No, just kidding. But
Hashtag
yes.
that's his side of the story.
But the winners write the history.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
And as the Silmarillion is, taught by elves, so who's guilty here.
Well, see, and that's we'll get into that. We'll bring that up. That elves are the ones writing these stories. We'll talk
Yes.
about that.
Yeah, yeah. So, maybe let us start somewhere. Maybe let's start at the beginning. Why not? Because I do think, and that is one of my first questions to you, and I'm interested and intrigued what you think. So, when the dwarves were made, this whole process of the creation of the
Mhm.
dwarves is so intriguing and actually such a beautiful, coming into being story. So, let's maybe just do a short overview. So God's plan was never to create the dwarves, right? So in the music of the Ainur, dwarves were not in the music of the Ainur. But one of our, very intriguing, one of the most powerful Valar, Aule, the smith, he wished for company. He wished to teach somebody that his love of craftsmanship, right? So he created the dwarves. And my first question, and let us read a passage of Aule talking to Eru, who then came and saw, oh, what did you create? And asked him a few questions. And Aule was literally ready to destroy his creation because he saw, okay, well, and this is a big thing in Tolkien, there is this thing that only God can create. And all of us, you, me, everybody, even the Valar, we're just sub creators. So we don't have, the flame imperishable. So something to bring something to real life, because only God can do that. We can only be evil, can only corrupt, right? And
Yep.
all these things. So there's this one very important quote in the beginning days of the dwarfs. And Aule said, and often strife shall arise between thine and mine, the children of my adoption and the children of my choice. So obviously, children of his choice are the elves. I don't think he meant men. Because we never have any problems with men. I really do think he meant specifically elves and dwarves.
I
So
think
what
you're right
is
there.
yeah, so what is your thinking? Why did God, so he literally in the creation or in the, beginning days of dwarves, or him allowing Aule to let them live and awake after his children, why do you think God did that? Because he doomed them right from the beginning. It sounds like it, no?
Kind of, but as you were talking about with that quote, where he really
Hmm.
wanted somebody to share in
Hmm.
the world lower down, where it was more. musical based, and I think that when you have the elves aren't as musical as the dwarves ended up becoming. A lot of what the dwarves do, singing in the mines and the halls to find out how deep they should go when it comes to digging, what is too far, as well as just a lot of, if you read through the books, there a lot of songs are dwarvish songs,
Hmm.
and I just think it's something that without the dwarves there'd be so much missing in the story itself. But I think it's good that elves themselves, as you said, like they were considered like the main children. Dwarves would have been like the adopted ones.
Yes.
It's good to have that kind of yin and yang. They can be
Hmm.
best friends, they can be enemies, they can be
Hmm.
brothers, where sometimes you fight with your siblings.
Hmm.
Um, and they're very different than what the elves are,
Hmm.
and they occupy completely different lands than the elves do.
Hmm.
They enjoy different weapons than what the elves have. They dress different. I just think it adds so much color and contrasting environments to the world that I think it's like super beautiful. Just the idea behind dwarves, and I mean, really, just everything about them, the way that they like, again, how they were created, the rumors around it, different stories depending on what you're reading. It's all very, very fascinating.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I fully agree. Um, I just always, when I read this passage, I feel actually sorry for the dwarfs because you feel in a way that yes, he adopted them, right? But
Hmm.
it was mainly for because he felt sorry for Aule, right? He was like because Aule explained to him why he wanted the dwarfs, and when Melkor, created all created orcs and all these other things, right? His intention was very different. It's not because he wanted company, right? It's because he wanted dominion over Earth, basically, and those were his minions. But Aulin never saw them as his puppets, right? I think it
Yeah.
was actually when Tolkien describes how the dwarves were in the beginning, because Aule couldn't give them free will. That is only God can give that, right? And they were in a way like puppets. There's really cool fan art actually depicted, of the cave they lay in or were born in, an owl, and sometimes they are depicted as having these strings like marionettes, right? And that
Yeah.
is
I've
what
seen fan
they
art like that. Yep.
Mhm. And that is what they would be. They wouldn't have a will of their own. And, being with somebody like that, that's not very entertaining and fun, right? After a while, it gets really boring. And then Eru Ilúvatar, God, gave them basically life, like real life. Like they have a free will, they have a choice, they can do whatever they want. Um, so I found it so sad when he said right from the beginning and doomed them that they will have strife. And I never, and you said it, and maybe it is because of that, because they are so different, right? Um, I always wondered, is it because of that, or is it because God didn't plan for it and wanted to make it harder for them? And this is why they are described as, and let me read another
Hmm.
passage, and this is really cool, and this explains a lot during the giving out the rings, why the dwarves actually could, as actually one of the only ones, would stand the power of the rings in that way. Um, since they were come in the days of the power of Melkor, Aule made the dwarfs strong to endure. Therefore they are stone hard, stubborn, fast in friendship and in enmity, and they suffer toil and hunger and hurt of body more hardly than are all other speaking peoples. And they live long, far beyond the span of men, yet not forever. So, this is really cool how they are, and this is what you said in the beginning as well. This is so cool that they are actually the real badasses. I mean, yes, elves can fight and all that, but they're the badasses of Middle Earth,
100%. But
Yeah,
like you were saying, I think that there's such a contrast between
yeah,
what they bring to the table and the elves, and you're saying that you see this like as a little bit of a sad story for them, but
yeah,
like all good tales, usually there is some
sad.
obstacle or something that makes things more
Yeah,
difficult, so when they do get over down the road, or when they do achieve goals and they create
yeah,
something beautiful and they're able to work together,
yeah,
it feels so much better in your heart watching it
yeah,
happen and seeing them succeed,
yeah,
that to me, yes, sure, there's a little bit of tragedy. It's kind of stone-hearted to make somebody like that who doesn't have their own free will, but
Yeah.
eventually, like all great stories, they're going to get it. They're going to persevere. They're going to push through.
Yeah. No, you're right. And we know this from our own experience, right? Just as you said, when you work for something, the outcome and, the result is so much more beautiful than when it's just handed to you, right? So,
Hmm.
yes, their story is very special because, in a way, you sometimes feel a lot was given to the elves right away, right? And this is what men also feel. And this is not just about the gift of men like death and the gift of elves of not being able to die, and you might question, is that a gift, is that a curse? But it's for another topic.
Yeah.
um but yeah, it is interesting that they had to work a lot, and even them not being, they were actually alive in a way. So the Durin and all the other six, of the seven clans of the dwarves, they were actually in a way alive before the elves. So, but let's not talk about that. So there are seven clans of the elves. The clans, so the Longbeards, Firebeards,
Yep.
Broadbeams, help me out,
You're
and
you're
the
getting
the
there.
other ones, the other ones in the east. I always forget about the east ones because I think they're evil.
Hold on, I'll see if I can
Iron
pull it up.
fists, Iron fists,
Do, do.
Longfoots. That's
Firebeards.
five. Firebeards
I
and
don't. I don't. Did you
Blacklocks.
mention them?
Yeah, and Blacklocks. We have them. We have the seven. So the mains and the ones we know from the first age, from the second age, from the third age. The main players are the Longbeards mainly, and then obviously Firebeards and Broadbeams as well in the first age, especially. The others. So let's talk maybe about them. They are said to live in the east. We don't know specifically where. It's not said because for the others we get locations. We get locations like Gundabad, the Longbeard. So
Yes.
during the Deathless, during the first, arose or awoke in Gundabad. Then the
Yes.
Firebeards in the Blue Mountains, and I think the Broadbeams also in the Blue Mountains. So you have these two locations basically, and the other one's in the east. So what do you think? What is your pet theory on, are they because there are some mentionings in additional material that they might have fallen for Morgoth, Sauron later on. Do you are they evil dwarfs?
I don't. Well, one, it's very fascinating to think about how Tolkien was devising dwarves from the beginning. And when he was
Yeah.
originally writing them, I think just recently on a stream, the Tolkien professor was talking about Tolkien's
Mhm.
intentions for the dwarves was for
Yeah.
them to be evil. They were
Yeah.
not supposed to be
Yes.
originally created to be part of like the men in the alliance that they have to fight back evil, but it was as he kind of wrote the story down and got to Gimli
Yeah.
and he wanted to expand upon
Yeah.
all this stuff that he decided, no, these are good guys, and I'm gonna go ahead and write them in and get this figured out. Could there be evil dwarves that get corrupted or are just kind of born that way? I think 100%, and I think that had he
Mhm.
had more time to flesh it out, you
Yeah.
would have seen, kind of like how elves have the kinslaying. I think you
Yeah.
have similar things with the dwarves, where there was going to be some that are mostly
Ooh.
good and maybe some that were bad, and because you have all these people fighting on Middle Earth itself,
Yeah.
I think eventually dwarven minds would connect to other dwarven minds of different clans, not
Mhm.
realizing that the others are so close that
Mhm.
they would eventually, you'd have those issues with borders. Like, are you guys digging too deep into
Yeah.
my territory? Who owns
Yeah.
this? And then they would fight each other. And
Yeah.
a lot of the evil forces in Middle Earth have great influence. They know how to say the right things to people to get them to
Yes.
turn and do these dastardly things. And I
Yeah.
for sure believe that, as much as I love dwarves and would like to believe, no, not us, would never have. It probably would.
Yeah. And yeah, as you said, in earlier versions, there's one version, I think it's in one of the books of History of Middle-earth books, one of the 12 volume, I don't know in which one, Melkor created the dwarves.
Yes.
Which is very, I mean, yeah, but it's good he changed his mind. I really like that. And just to finish off the creation, so I'm a very big fan of Greek mythology. And in Greek mythology, because obviously we know, yes, the dwarves are mainly based, on Norse mythology. Makes sense,
Yes.
I'm from Germany. We have them all over our, like ancient law and history. And it is interesting because it always reminded me, the creation process always reminded me, and what happened between Eru and Aule reminded me of Zeus, because there were various stages of men in Greek mythology. So the first stage was, I don't know if you know all of them, but the first stage was the Gold Age. After the Gold Age came the Silver, then the Bronze, then the Hero Age of Heroes. This is where Troy and all these stories come
Yes.
from. And after that came the Iron Age. So Zeus basically created, I think, Kronos before him, but then I think from the Silver Age onwards, at least Bronze Age, Zeus created humans, and this is very similar to what Aule did actually, but he also destroyed them afterwards because he saw their flaws. In, I think, the Silver Age, the Gold Age was perfect. Those were, the real good ones. They lived with the gods. It's very similar to what the Valar later did with the elves. But Silver, Bronze, Age, that they were evil. They were, they just were fighting with each other and all that. There was strife all the time. So he created them, and then he later destroyed them again. So this is very, it just always reminded me of that. And we know, Tolkien also loved Greek mythology.
For
So
sure.
so in a way, this could have also played into this idea of the creation process. It just reminded me of it. Doesn't mean I never had him saying that, but being a lover of Greek mythology, it reminded me of all the ages.
Yeah, and logically, that theory of yours makes sense, and he probably
Yeah.
was influenced by, going through those, old histories and
Yes.
stuff, all the mythologies. How could
Yeah.
you not? If you're writing
Yeah.
something fantastical,
Yeah.
you would look back and you would, oh, they did great on this, but maybe if I would change up this or this, I would have liked it better. But how
Yeah.
could you not be influenced by that?
No. No. Um, Good. So that was the creation process. Then let's come to the topic of our talk here. So, friendship and hatred between dwarves and elves. Let's maybe start because it started the elves hunting the dwarves, and that the thing is, I don't know, how do you see it? I really don't think the elves were evil at that time and were like, oh, let's say that was not it, and that was not the curse, or curse or whatever Eru gave in the beginning, that his children and Auli's children will have strife. I think that had literally nothing to do with it. The elves were also not long on this earth. They were young, they didn't know, and they were hunting, and they
Correct.
didn't, it was not somebody gave them a manual and said, oh, these are also
Yeah.
people, please
Good
don't
guys
hunt.
this way, bad guys that way.
Exactly. And in a way, they were afraid because we know our friend Morgoth, he scared them all the time. He corrupted elves. He caught elves. He, stole elves at night away, corrupted them, made orcs out of them, and all that. They were afraid. Middle Earth at that time was a really scary place in the beginning days. And yeah, for them to hunt them, I wouldn't judge them, because a lot of people, when you watch some videos on YouTube, say, this is where it started. I don't think so. I'm not sure.
I'm sure it plays a little bit because it's never typically just this one thing sets all these things in motion, but I'm sure it's
Yeah.
part of it. Like
Yeah.
you were saying, I don't think that elves, despite my appearance, are just bad from the jump, and I don't think they were hunting dwarfs maliciously. I think
No.
when it's if you try to put yourself in their mindset and you're a young race in a young world and you don't really know what is,
Yeah.
creature, person, enemy, friendly, it's hard to determine all that. And
Yeah.
depending on how they saw these dwarves when they
Yeah.
first saw them, if you hadn't seen anything like them before, you would picture them to be a little bit scary and you'd
Yeah.
be startled. And, you hunt them thinking maybe it's to clear areas so we can advance our population.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a food thing and then they found out dwarves don't taste great. I don't know. But
Well, I
I
don't
don't
agree.
think I don't think that they did it just out of like the cruelness in their hearts that
No.
they saw another race and we're gonna destroy it and kill it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. So
Now
we
maybe online if I was
debunked.
arguing with somebody, I would type that up and throw it in their face. But me being
No.
honest right now, no, I don't believe that elves are
Yeah.
doing it maliciously.
So we debunked that first myth. Good.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, let's maybe talk about before we come to Moria or Khazad-dûm, because yes, that was one of the main places
Yes.
to talk about. But in the First Age, we have two very important cities. We have Nogrod and Belegost. Maybe let's talk about Belegost first, because we have one amazing king in no, let's talk Nogrod first, because of death, I don't want to spoil this. So let's talk Nogrod first. So Nogrod, the dwarves of Nogrod, they aided, because this is now, it started actually off, except from the killing, it started off really good, because the dwarves aided the elves in building Nargothrond, right?
Yep.
In building the beautiful and never again, achieved the halls of Thingol of Menegroth, right? That was supposed to be so beautiful, the caves and everything. And it wasn't the elves doing this, it were the dwarves aiding in building this beautiful, kingdom and city. um and yeah, so you also had one very cool person, and he's one of my favorite, and we will see, not obviously not him being portrayed, maybe he will be mentioned, because we have a cool sword, Narsil. And there was an epic smith, because yes, we know and we hear a lot, even Elrond, says, "Oh, this is one of the swords, from elves of the First Age of the epic smith, blah blah blah." But Tolkien 1,000% states that the dwarves, especially the dwarves of the First Age, were the greatest smith. They couldn't be rivaled, not even by elves, right? And the
Yep.
elves were taught by Aule himself in Valinor. The
And
Noldor were.
and the elves were not bad smiths. They were
No,
fantastic. If you look at
no,
some of the weapons and armors they created from the first and second ages,
yes,
beautiful stuff, including the
yes.
cities. But yeah, dwarves number one.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree. And Tolkien says that in
Mhm.
words. So yeah. So we have this epic smith, Telkar. I don't know if I butchered. How would you pronounce? Yeah,
I would follow your lead because when I
yeah.
watch your show, the way you pronounce and enunciate everything, that becomes the standard of how I attempt to do it when other people are
Okay.
not around.
Okay, it's just because, well, I watch a lot, I watch a lot of the Tolkien reads from his source material many times, and there are lots of scholars who tell you
Mhm.
how to read it. Although Tolkien mentions very often he doesn't really care when he's in the process of reading a lot of text, he doesn't really care. But the thing is, as a German, it's very easy to roll the R, and this is how it's
Yeah,
supposed to, so it's,
and
yeah.
it sounds great.
Yeah. So Telchar, whatever. He forged Narsil. We just talked about that, and maybe we can talk about the sword I saw in the show, because not a big fan, but maybe they changed something. And he forged Angrist as well, which is the dagger that Beren used to cut the Silmaril. So everything is connected, which I
Yes.
find so cool. And Tolkien loves his weapons. He loves the mythology of swords, of all these things. And yeah, Telkar is one of the greatest smiths that ever was, and his things live on, which is really cool. So he also created, and this is a super cool story again, of a friendship of a dwarf and an elf, the dragon helm of Dorlomin. It wasn't always, I don't think it had a name before, it was just a helmet he created. And he was saved by, I think it was Medros, I think. So he was uh, in I don't know, something happened, and the helmet was given to Medros, and then later on, because I think it was said to be too heavy for elves to use, and it in the end ended up in Dorlomen and was used by Turin Turamba. It was like a symbol of the. It became a symbol of the house of Hurin, which is
Right.
really really cool because that helmet is important because in Nargothrond he came to Nargothrond and they fought a lot, with Glaurung later on and everything. So that helmet becomes a symbol and really important for the pride of men. But it was originally forged by a dwarf,
Yeah.
went through elven hands, and then ended up with men.
And that's not the only thing that dwarves forged with the intentions of giving to elves that
Yeah.
maybe they attempted to try to recover peacefully when the deal didn't go how they wanted. I don't know. Maybe would you like to talk about a certain gentleman? I
Yeah.
think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Start. Talk.
Well,
Spill. What is your version of the story?
go ahead and explain to us what the elves wrote in regards to Thingol and the story of what the dwarves were supposed to bring, and then kind of like just leave alone. Go ahead. Let's hear a little bit, and then I'll tell you my
Okay.
stance on it.
Okay, good. So the backstory of all this is the dwarves gave a beautiful necklace to Finrod, who was the king then in Nargothrond. It was the Nauglamir, and it's really cool because they in the necklace there were beautiful gems from Valinor, and I really do think that there are very often depictions of the dwarves when the elves give them gems from the undying lands. They love that, like the pearls
Yes.
from Aqualonde and all that. And the dwarves really, love crafting with these kind of materials because you can't find similar things in Middle Earth.
Yes.
And so they created this beautiful necklace. And Hurin Turamba, we just talked about the dragon helmet. So this is so cool because everything is connected in a way. He found the necklace after the sack of Nargothrond. So basically, everybody was dead, and Hurin went to Nargothrond and found the necklace. Went to King Thingol in Beleriand, an elf. He was a Sindar elf, and he basically threw the necklace at him and said, thank you for aiding in destroying my family, blah, blah, blah. Let's not go too deep. So Thingol had this beautiful necklace made by dwarves originally. And his son in law, Beren, brought him what Helen is wearing here now. Not really. I wish.
We get it
Um,
though. I like it.
yeah. So one of the three Silmarils, which Beren cut, almost losing his life, out of Morgoth's crown, right? So two of the most precious, because the Nauglamir was one of the most precious objects of the dwarves, right? Um, yes, with, gems of the Undying Lands brought by the elves to Middle Earth. And I mean, let's not go too deep into the story of the Silmaril, but they were
Mhm.
sentient. I really believe that. I do think the three stones were sentient, just like the One Ring, like Glaurung, like some swords. Glaurung is a dragon. Sorry,
Mm.
like what's Eol's sword? Gurthang. Sorry. Yeah. So that stone was put into the necklace. So
Mhm.
they created for Thingol. Thingol asked them to do this. And it took a while. It wasn't done in one day. And over time, this is how Tolkien describes it, but there are different versions. I know that. But this is the version that's in the Silmarillion. So I'll go
Mhm.
with this one, because winners write history. So the dwarves kind of fell under the spell of the Silmaril. And that happened to other people. Even his creator, Fëanor, fell under the spell of the Silmarils. Morgoth, like a lot of
Yes.
people did. Even Beren, because he became greedy after seeing them and he wanted to cut out more. So this is a real thing that people fell under a spell and wanted to possess them in a way. And they worked with it. And then in the end, they were like, you know what? We're going to keep this. So again, the Cimmeral did not belonged to them,
Hmm.
right?
Agreed.
The necklace was given to another Noldor king, Finrod. So that was his. And then Hurin gave it to Thingol, so that was also his. Yes, dwarves made it, but So that whole thing, uh, was like, okay, well, why? So they really wanted to keep it, and then Thingol said, "No, that's not going to happen. This is mine. I wanted to pay for it. Yes, he didn't then pay for it
Hmm.
because they started an argument,
A little
um,
bit.
a little bit, and then they killed my dad. So what?
So
That's
that's the story you grew up with, and I
I was
appreciate
there.
hearing
I
it.
I was there 3,000 years ago.
So, as you said, the winners do get to write history. So sometimes history is a little bit skewed and tainted. As you were saying about the gems originally, with like the light of Valinor on them, I think there are a lot of things to be upset about with the Hobbit movies. But when they open up that chest and there's just these like bright,
Uh,
bright
the white
jewels,
gems
yes,
of Lasgal.
the look Thranduil gives those,
Yeah,
like, lets you know, like, these are awesome, and elves love this stuff, and the depiction of those look outstanding. Now,
yeah.
I'm up with your story all the way to the point where um, the dwarves are then asked to basically sit the Silmaril into the piece of jewelry itself, and then bring it back and let Thingol have it, and then we're all done. Everybody's happy, and we're all friends. Now, that is a great simple way to put it, but here's what happens. It's like when you go to a friend and you tell the friend you want them to do something for you, but you want it done a little bit cheaper. And then they're like, okay. And then a week or two goes by. They're working on this little side project for you. And they're like, hey, you said you were going to pay this much. How about we get a little bit right now and then we'll keep working on it? And then I'm sure Thingol's like, I want the whole thing done. And the dwarves are like, I don't work for free, buddy. I got my own stuff I can craft. I got all these cool things that we could be doing. And I'm sure it came down to some sort of payment disagreement. The dwarves probably felt like, even though it wasn't for him, maybe the original person it was for, they didn't get their payment from. And that's why they walk in there and they basically throw it at Thingol and they're like, hey, you can have this. Thanks for killing all these people, yada, yada, yada. It's because he was passing the buck. He was passing the blame. And dwarves don't care who is paying for it. We just want our fair share. And that's where this disagreement comes from. The money wasn't good. And the money wasn't coming at the level that it should have been. And if he would have just ponied up and paid what
Funny.
was agreed upon, then maybe there wouldn't have been a little bit of a misunderstanding. Now, I don't know what happened after that. I'm sure everybody lived happily ever after and there was no drama, but that story is not a 100% tale of what actually happened.
Okay. So, okay.
When do dwarves just murder
So let's agree to disagree here.
one time?
But what happened later is actually really interesting. And I come again with the Germanic folktales, but this
Mhm.
is very cool because something like that, and we know Tolkien loved that history. So Thingol was killed. Whatever. Was it
Mhm.
right? Was it wrong? Let's
Yeah. Yeah, he fell
agree
down.
to this. Yeah, he fell. Exactly. Rip dad.
Yeah.
And then some of the dwarves were slain. Some of the dwarves actually escaped. I think two
2.
escaped, and those two, told their version of the story, aka your version.
Mhm. They might
Um,
have embellished a little bit.
they probably did, yes, correct. And the Battle of the Thousand Caves, it was called, which is really cool. And Beren, elves, and Ents, and this is really, really cool. Went on the hunt and killed them basically. And oh yeah, it was also said that they also stole treasures of Thingol, right?
Yeah.
When they sacked the hold. So not just, it wasn't just about that killing. It was also they stole literally everything they could find.
They were
And
thinking
when
you gotta pay your debt back with interest.
Yes. And it is really cool because Beren just took the Nauglamir with the Silmaril in it, and everything else, and this is so weird, he sunk in a river. Forgot, I think Askar or something like that was the river
Um,
was called. And it's cool that the ends even help to kill the dwarves. This is very reminiscent, and
yep.
if you imagine then later on the scene with with Kilmily at the axe, it's kind of cool and a throwback. But yes, so he sunk the treasures, of Beleriand basically, and they had a lot of them. It was one of the richest kingdoms at that time, and he sunk it in the river. And we have a very cool, and maybe he took it from there, I don't know. So it's called The Ring of the Nibelung. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's a big Wagner opera as well, but that is more on the Norse mythology thing. So if we have something like the Poetic Edda, it's The Ring of the Nibelung for us Germans. And it's an epic story about betrayal. It's about, Siegfried the Dragon Slayer and him being immortal, whatever, invulnerable. But it's really cool because Hagen von Tronje, does exactly the same. He has the treasure of the Nibelung, and again, there's a magic ring that makes you disappear. Kind of sounds familiar, but
Yeah.
anyway, so Hagen, he sinks the treasure in the river Rhine, and till today, this is one of the biggest rivers. I'm actually, I grew up near that town where the Ring of the Nibelung plays, and in that river he sunk the treasure. So exactly what Beren did, and this is so cool because Ring of the Nibelung is very connected to the Lord of the Rings. He took a lot of inspiration from there, but yeah.
Again, how
So
can't you?
no, which is perfectly. This is never a ooh, why did he do that? It's more a really cool that he's combining so many myth and mythologies and
Yes.
stories of old. Yeah, but I just wanted to mention that because when I read that, I completely forgot about that passage, and when I prepared for our stream today, I was like, what? This is in our mythology, which is really cool. Yeah, but I really like that the Ents aided, in yeah, well, killing Thingol, the dwarves.
The dwarves, yeah. Which is weird because when we see Ents in the movies, they claim that it takes them forever to make decisions on things, and we'll get back to you and let me know if we're going to help or not. But meanwhile, you get a couple elves together that maybe tell the truth, maybe they tell a little bit of a story. Can you come help us kill dwarves? And then they're like, "Oh yeah, not a problem." And as you said, this is just another thing that the dwarves had to suffer through before we could get to their great trajectory that they were eventually on with, creating the halls of Khazad Dûm and all the great things that happened there.
Yeah,
And as
yeah,
far as Tolkien is the end of the story for me is Khazad Dûm is in all its glory, like we're going to see in the show, and then
yeah.
nothing happens after that. In my head, he forgot to write the rest, and there is no Durensbane.
Oh no.
Hmm.
Well, the Khazad-dûm is a story, and this is really cool. It's a story of falling and rising
Hmm.
again,
Yeah, I
which
know.
is really, yeah. Okay, so we have, the dwarves of Nogrod. I think we have them covered pretty well, and we also have the dwarves of Belegost, and we have one epic king, and we have a very beautiful line. I want to read from that line because we said, yes, elves are good fighters, but the dwarves were made to fight, right? And they had also their craftsmanship aided, in something coming in dragons, fires, you know fire beasts, evil creature. They Nobody ever saw dragons before. They didn't know of this is basically, yeah, well, welcome to our time, somebody throwing an atomic bomb, right? Is
Correct.
the
Yeah.
elves were like, what is happening now? And how Tolkien describes this battle, the Nirnaed Arnodia, the battle of the number tears, and many other battles, where dragons came in and played a pivotal part. Even in the fall of Gondolin, it is literally a weapon of mass destruction, and you can't do anything against that. This is literally nothing. But the dwarfs had something that made them withstand dragon fire, and those were, their iron masks. And I wish one day we can see that. And because again, there's very, very beautiful artwork. Of that, but it's really cool that they had that and they could withstand Glaurung's fire, which nobody else. Like, it's literally said the armies of Medros, they burnt alive.
Yep.
He burned all the elves fighting alive. So the dwarves could do that. And now something really, sad, because in the end, they aided the elves in fighting off Morgoth and his forces. And that was all in the first age, by the way. And so they did work together, which is really important.
Yeah, it wasn't all bad.
They were allies, exactly. They had one common enemy. um, and yeah, so this is now the death of the king, and again, I want to see that portrayed one day, because this is really beautiful. So the king died a hero, because he literally, with his last deed was to cut Glaurung in a way, because at that time Glaurung, the scales, is it called scales? Yeah,
Yeah,
right, scales. They weren't ready yet, because the dragons were unleashed actually before their time, and he was still young, and he could really wound him, and the dwarves did also with their axes. So they really hurt the dragons, and then something beautiful. Then the dwarves raised up the body, so he's now dead, of Azagral, and bore it away. And with slow steps they walked behind, singing in dirge, in deep voices, as it were a funeral pomp in their country, and gave no heed more to their foes, and none dared to stay them. So this is from the Silmarillion, from the fifth battle near Night Anudiad. And this is so cool because, it was in the middle of the war, but they were so saddened by their glorious king dying. And I think for them, Azagar must have been some figure like, I don't know, like Durin maybe,
no,
right?
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And yeah, so he died fighting of a dragon, dying a hero, but they were like, okay, this is it for us now. And in a way, you could say, okay, so you leave. I mean, he's dead anyway. You can bury him later. So I always read it a bit like that. But it just shows, that how close they are and how important rituals are for the
Yes.
dwarves.
And you could look at really any battle in modern history or fantasy history,
Yeah.
everything that's going on, they were like, we need to do right by him right now.
Yeah.
We're going to stop what we're
Yeah.
doing. Even yeah, there's a
Yeah.
war happening. There's a battle going
Yeah.
on. People are dying all around us. It is that important. He's that much of a leader, and we care that
Yeah.
much about holding up our traditions that to us, if we get slain while we do this, we get slain. But we are
Yeah.
going to do this because this is the
Yeah.
right thing to do, and this is how we've
Yeah.
done it in history.
Yeah.
And I just that part blows my mind
Yeah.
that they had like the wherewithal to think everything going on, stop all the
Yeah.
rage, the madness, the fighting, and we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
And that's
And the
a
whole
beautiful, sad but beautiful portion
yeah.
of the story.
Yeah, and this is again, the singing comes into this. What you mentioned, in the beginning of our video, they were lamenting, right?
Mhm.
The death of, yeah. Again, he was somebody like Durin to the dwarves of Belegost. So yeah, that's a very heroic and beautiful death.
Yeah,
And their mythology, like all that, all this whole, like, they don't speak their language in open, nobody really knew. I mean, a few knew how to read Kuzdul, right?
correct.
But they had their own names, and everything was hidden in a way, which is very, that it makes them mysterious. Yes, the elves and stuff like that is also mysterious, but in another way. But the dwarven thing is really,
Mhm.
it really gets you. It's
And
cool.
part of that mystery is just that, maybe it's because they won so much, but we have a lot of information about the different Elven languages, and I mean, you can go
Yes.
on Twitter and find people who translate everything
Yeah.
Elvish, and I think that it is so cool. The Dwarven is
Yeah.
a little bit more of a mystery because it was less
Yeah.
of it out there for people to
Yeah.
track. That plays into it as well.
Yeah. No,
Like,
definitely.
what is? Look at this. Who-
I know. Well, I can't.
Right?
Yeah. Well,
Who can translate that?
yeah, not me.
I
It
got
was
three
so
of them.
cool when you posted it on Twitter. I was like, this looks really, really. Even the paper looks really cool, no?
It is. I
Yeah.
again, I don't know who got them for me,
Yeah.
but
So
it had to
good.
be family because nobody has my address. But
Yeah.
whoever it was, I don't. I maybe I should send out a mass text thanking somebody. I think that was those are awesome. I don't even know where to put them yet, but it's going to be set up around here somewhere.
Yeah, you need to frame it and put it behind you somewhere. Well, I'm definitely planning. I want to find a really cool done map of the first age because I'm a first age girl,
Don't
and
blame
have
you.
it hung. Yeah, those were the days,
Yeah,
of the elves of the Noldor. So yeah, so we covered that. We covered Belegost, Nogrod. Let's now maybe oh no, wait. Before we get to Moria, talking about fast age, there was a really really cool friendship going on, and I mean, you might question that character because yes, he was called Eol the Dark Elf, and his son Meglin was literally the one responsible for the fall of my city Gondolin. So hashtag shame on you. But it is really cool that this friendship in the first age is portrayed because he was, and we don't know. I mean, yes, we know Celebrimbor and the Gwaithamirda, and then later in the second age, they were friends with the dwarves of Moria.
hmm
But Eol was said to be such a good friend to the dwarves that he was invited to their festivities. This is where he left, and then his wife and his son made a run for it when he left to party with the dwarves basically. And he taught the dwarves a lot, but the dwarves also learned from him a lot. And I do think because he's one of the forgers of two epic swords, one of them being Gurthang. I always want to say Glaurung, sorry, Gurthang.
No, but yeah,
Yeah, so Gurthang is one of I do think it is one of the swords we saw in the material for the show.
yes,
I'm crossing my fingers this is happening.
I'm with you. I
Um,
think it is.
do you think yes?
I
Okay.
do.
Because you saw in the middle, so the broken sword, you saw in the middle something that is not metal. Oh, sorry, this is very loud. My cats are going nuts.
You're fine.
Um,
My cats are in the other room.
Okay, good. I can't ban them. This is like an open floor here. So you see something that looks like something of a stone or meteorite. I'm not. This
Yes.
is how I interpreted it. And Eol, maybe the dwarves taught him how to do that. I mean, because Eol never was in the Undying Lands, so he didn't learn from Aule. He didn't, learn from anyone basically, but maybe the dwarves taught him, the dwarves being taught by Aule, maybe the dwarves, this is my pet theory, taught him or aided him in forging Gurthang, which would be so cool.
I think, well, one, that would be awesome, especially if we can see it actually happening. I was trying to get on
Yeah,
Twitter to pull up the picture of it, but
yeah,
yeah, that was one of the things that he bonded with the dwarves over was like a
yeah,
passion for smithing and crafting. And
yes,
dwarves obviously love that stuff. And like you said, he's one of the few
yeah,
that have ever been like openly invited, come check out what we're doing in a
yeah,
good time.
yeah,
Where in the show that we're gonna see, Elrond, a young Elrond, is going to
yes,
come to their halls, but it's not because they're trying to celebrate with him. It's to repair some
no,
relationships
yeah,
based on the text that we've been given.
yeah,
But yeah, that would be so cool to see them partnering up on that to craft
yeah,
an epic weapon.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I
Or
think
maybe,
that
in one of
image 100%, I think, is your weapon that you're hoping to see. Fingers
yeah.
crossed.
Yeah, I think so because the material in the middle doesn't look like anything, like from it doesn't look like metal at all, and it's obviously not wood. So what is it? And
Right.
this very weird dark stone material, which hashtag meteor, is also like the Tower of Orthang's walls, the part down there is also made from this weird black stone. So it appears a few times in Tolkien's mythology, so that's really cool. And yeah, I always thought, well, maybe because why else mention this big friendship and even his son, because obviously he's the son of his father and he must have learned a lot, and he brought him to the dwarves. I think so because just before the fall of Gondolin, this is where he's captured. He was with the dwarves. And normally you're not allowed to leave Gondolin and come back, but he did, and he was with the dwarves. And this is really cool. This friendship, and there's another cool first age friendship, and I want to read from that, because this also Tolkien says that many times. He says that later about Moria and Celebrimbor, but this started in the first age of the dwarves and Caranthea, which is one of the seven sons of Feanor. And it's weird, but the Noldor being, it would make most sense. And the Celebrimbor is a Noldor descendant, and Caranthea obviously is one. They are the closest to the dwarves, and that totally makes sense because they love smithing,
Hmm.
just like the dwarves do. And it is said that Aule himself taught them when they were back in Valinor, even some tricks and whatnot. So let me read this passage because it's also really, really cool, and another friendshipy thing between dwarves and elves in the first age.
Yeah.
So blah 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 blah. No great love was there between them, for the dwarves were secret and quick to resentment. And and Caranthea was haughty and scarce, and concealed his scorn for the unloveliness of the Naugrim, and his people followed their lord. Nevertheless, since both peoples feared and hated Morgoth, they made alliance, and had it of great profit, for the Naugrim learned many secrets of craft in those days, so that the smith and masons of Nogrod and Belegost became renowned among their kin. And when the dwarfs began again to journey into Beleriand, all the traffic of the dwarf mines passed first through the hands of Caranthea, and thus great riches came to him. Which is kind of cool. So he taxed them for passing through. Um, but yeah, you see, it's, yes, I do think obviously the dwarves were the greater smith and everything, but they also learned from the elves, from the Noldor, coming from the Undying Lands, bringing different techniques.
Hmm.
So you feel, I always felt like the dwarves evolved in their
Yes.
technique, especially in the first age, because of the Noldor, bringing them these gems and teaching them things from Valinor, which is a different form of smithing, obviously, than possible in Middle Earth, due to other materials and
Hmm.
whatnot. But really cool.
But I buy into that theory 100% because
Hmm.
in really any field, typically you don't have one person or one group stay at the top for forever. Somebody
Yeah,
comes along and they figure out a way to do something
yeah,
differently, change up some strategies or the
yeah,
way that things are done, and eventually they kind of surpass the
mhm,
original number one. And
yeah,
if dwarves wanted to be that group that were the greatest smiths of all time, they needed to see what other people were doing
yes,
and not just sticking to the base techniques that they had learned.
yeah,
And elves have great smiths, and
yeah,
Celebrimbor is, you know, I'm always told he's the greatest, but I have a hard disagree. But that mutual respect, like dwarves, even if you were their enemy, if they thought that you crafted and you were smithing these amazing things, they can respect that.
they
And
respected it. Yes, yeah,
Celebrimbor smiths a couple things here and there that
yeah,
they like. They get this mutual respect, and then
yeah,
eventually, due to this, even if it's not an official friendship, which I think it was,
yeah,
they're able to, build a doorway that would open up and help people travel
yeah,
between and trade things and establish like a friendlier alliance between the
yeah.
two different groups.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would agree with you, coming to the second age now. And yes, Moria, finally. We arrive in Casa Doom. This is literally one of, I mean, I love Tolkien's names. This is like, even not knowing what these names mean, right? Because yes, I don't speak Sindar on a daily level,
You don't?
or Kuzdul. No, don't. But like something like, the Ulumori, like these horns Ulmo used, and all these things, they just sound so beautiful and they make sense, and they,
Even if you
in a
don't know
way,
the meaning.
even if you don't know the meaning, but you understand what it means, which is so, I don't know, I've never read any author in this world, and I read a lot of books that is able to do that. This is so cool. But yeah, so Khazad-dûm, which is literally one of the coolest names ever.
100%. And in the
Yeah,
show, it is the thing that I am, of all the
yeah,
storylines and all the plots, the places
yeah,
they're going to go, and even the characters. Yeah,
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of one Durin at a time, maybe two at a time in the show. That's
Yeah, it's
odd,
weird. Yeah,
but
because
I'm
the
open to
mythology.
seeing how they do that. But it's
Yeah,
Khazad-dûm in all its glory that is,
yeah,
like, the main thing that pulls me. I want to see that in the worst
yeah,
way, just the halls full of dwarves, traders from
yeah,
other cities, the
yeah,
gems, the mining, just
yeah.
it's gonna be so epic. I hope they do it right.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. And I do think this time they won't do the dwarves dirty and just use them as comedic
Comedic
relief or,
relief.
yeah, I don't think so. Yes, maybe they make, but everything I've seen so far was more, they are very, like, there's this sadness when you
Yes,
hear about her, doing the singing and everything. And there is this sadness about them. And when you learn about what the rings did to them, which props, and we will come, at the end we will talk about the rings and the effect of the dwarves. But again, this just speaks for the dwarves that it, because how easily are men corrupted, and these are Numenorians. Some of them are Numenorians. Like,
right.
this is the promised race of
Right.
men, right?
Just not
So
regular men, another level.
exactly, but they fell for it, and the dwarves didn't. And yes, in a way, it led to their doom in the end because they become greedier and greedier. And I do think, yeah, that was so the ring curse in a way befell them as well, but not
In
as
a different
Sauron
way.
wanted. Yes,
Mhm.
exactly. So they didn't become his slaves and minions, which cool. I mean, props the dwarves to
Right, yeah, for
withstand
being that
that.
hardy that they can resist that level of magic, and as you
Yeah.
said, it's not just regular everyday humans that are getting corrupted by this in the way he intended, but, like, the
No.
top of the food chain, like, they're number 1, and they
Yeah.
fall for it.
Yeah, yeah. And you see, even, because the rings, I mean, even one of the greatest elves, Celebrimbor, was, from a very important royal house. His lineage is, I mean, depending on what is canon for you, but his lineage is really, it's in a way, yes, a magical lineage as
It
well, and
is.
very powerful lineage. And he wasn't, in a way, able to withstand because he forged those bloody rings for Sauron. I have a cool video about that, about his intentions, why because the rings were intended for elves. How did Sauron made this powerful elf, Lord of Eregion, forge magic rings? And he used spells, he used magic. That was definitely black magic he used for the rings.
It had to
He
be.
never he never, did he never ask a question in the beginning days when he forged all these rings, because they were intended for elves? So, but the dwarves withstood it, which, props to the dwarves. And I'm ashamed to say that on my channel, delete it immediately, but no, I'm just kidding.
You can cut that part.
Yeah, we'll cut it. No, just kidding. So yeah, Moria. Yeah, we talked about the Durin thing. Again, mythology about Durin the Deathless being reborn, 6 more times. So basically there will be 7 Durins. And it is so cool, this whole mythology of the, reborn,
Yep.
in dire times of need, in a way. Um, and yeah, so I was a bit, but this is the wrong Durin at that time. And it's not like Durin the first and then his son is Durin the second. That's not the case. It's actually,
Correct.
in a way, always the same spirit embodied in another dwarf king.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it. So it's not son, father and son. So I was a bit, how
Yeah,
did I
it's
do
kind
it?
of like a reincarnation type thing, but it doesn't have to be
Reincarnation, yes.
from
Yeah.
the same group. It's basically, they think that this person is born with the spirit
Yeah.
of Durin the Deathless,
Yeah.
arguably one of the greatest dwarves of all time, and then,
Yeah.
like, that's how they get the name. It's not
Yeah.
just, they have a baby and this person is automatically
No.
Will Jr. and then Will the Third and Will the Fourth. It doesn't work like that
No.
in Dwarven, and, yeah, having them around at the same time in the show is definitely, from a Dwarven fan perspective, it's the one thing that is confusing to me.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
also only have like 3 seconds of dwarves in the trailer
No.
and a
Yeah.
little bit of the variety article.
Yeah.
I'm open to hearing more about it and seeing more about it and going, hopefully, I can go, Oh, that makes sense. I could see that,
Yeah,
but that's what you're gonna run into when you're condensing down
yeah,
thousands of years into a 5-season show, so
yeah.
I get that, but yeah, the multi-Doran at one time is a little bit
Mhm.
perplexing for me for right now.
Yes, until we know more. But yeah, so really cool is also the friendship of Galadriel and the dwarves of Moria. And I don't know how they will portray this. There are different versions of the Eregion story. So there's one version, again, I have a video about that. So there's one version where Galadriel and Celeborn actually founded Eregion. And then Celebrimbor comes in and he basically, under the influence of Sauron, sacks them. They leave. Well, Celeborn stays. Galadriel leaves. He stays there, to kind of keep his eye on the Gwaithamirdine and what's happening there, to be a bit like a spy there, and to still control the situation a little bit. But there's also another version where Celebrimbor is the lord of Eregion, and Galadriel and Celeborn just go there and live there. But it is interesting that she is one of the first, before it is mentioned, the friendship of Celebrimbor and Durin is mentioned. Galadriel is said to be so foresighted that she knows the dwarves will come in handy in fighting evil. She is aware something will happen, that evil is arising in the east again in Middle Earth. She has her own thing with Sauron. He killed her brother.
Yeah,
He killed a lot. Morgoth killed in the first age a lot of her, her family. But Sauron was one of his first lieutenants, so yes, he's also responsible. But single-handedly, Sauron killed her brother, and so she has her own thing, with Sauron going on. But she is so foresighted that it is not specified that she goes there and visits them and has a she's
yeah.
BFFs with Durin, but it is said that she establishes this whole friendship thing, which is very important, and cool, because talked about this before. Her husband, where's he from?
Where
He's
where is he from?
He's from Beleriand, and his former king and actually relative is Thingol, King Thingol. So he was there. Again, I was there 3,000 years ago now, but he's a Cinder, and he obviously he doesn't like the dwarves because things happen to his kin and king,
Holding a little
and
bit of a grudge.
yeah, and his whole kingdom fell. Same like Thranduil. This is why him and Thranduil get along so well, actually, because we don't know, but I think Thranduil was born at that time. It was definitely his dad was from Orofer, was from Beleriand. From He was under King Thingol. We don't know about the relation, but yeah. So he does not like the dwarves, and both don't, and he literally refuses to go because Galadriel uses the passage, the easy short way through
Yes.
Moria. Again, her friendship came in handy. She knew, and he refuses to, which I'm like, oh man, come on, dude. But anyway, yeah. So it's interesting that she, and her relationship later with Gimli, it's so beautiful and so cool and so meaningful also, because she's the queen of Lorien and Cinder Elves, who were
I
kind of,
think you're going to see that third version of Galadriel, the one that had
yeah,
the foresight to know that the
yeah.
dwarves would make
I think
useful
so.
allies. I
Yeah,
think that's what we are going to see in the
yeah,
show. And that
yeah,
whole rights thing with Amazon, and what do they have the rights to, what don't they? How much can they borrow from different ages where they maybe didn't have the rights? That's all
yeah,
very fascinating. But as the
yeah,
Tolkien professor was kind of explaining it in an adaptation, if they have access to all this, it is, their job to choose which of these backstories, which of
yeah,
this portions of lore they're picking from. And I
yeah,
think that lines up 100% with
yeah,
the Galadriel in the show kind of being on a mission to go throughout and rally the troops together, fight off evil because she knows the evil has not
yeah,
fully gone away yet, or it's,
yeah,
arisen again. I
yeah,
think that's the good Galadriel that we're going to see in the show.
yeah.
smart being friends with dwarves. It makes the
Yeah.
most sense for everybody.
Yeah, but it's cool, to see the tension because there's so much tension between Eregion and Linden as well.
Hmm.
Because, Linden never trusted Anatar. Galadriel never did, but Eregion did. They fell for Sauron. So even elves, being set up against each other by Sauron, really, really cool.
Yeah,
And then the dwarves, obviously being at that point, I would say, on the side, of the Eregion, of the Smith of Eregion, of the Gwaith but it is cool because we know, I think the dwarves in the Second Age, Dwarves of Khazad-dûm, they even saved Elrond's ass once in one of the battles, which
yeah.
is cool.
And then he becomes
So
friends with Doran down the road, and he'll find
yeah,
himself in Khazad-dûm trying to repair the relationship, and kind of like
yeah,
you said with that elf tension amongst themselves of,
yeah,
should we be cool with them? Should we not? You'll see
yeah,
that from the dwarves as well. There will be some that are in support of
yeah,
rekindling this alliance with Elrond
yeah,
and being nice,
yeah,
and then these other dwarves that are like, no, we can't trust them.
yeah. But my feeling, my gut feeling, or not just talking about the show, talking about it in general, the dwarves were more, you know what? At the end of the day, we can just shut ourselves in our minds. They
Yes.
till one point, till the Balrog came. They were like, okay, you know what? We don't really need to partake in the, yes, we do, because yes, we want to fight evil, but our last solution is always, we just can hide in our minds because
Yeah.
our life is underground. And this is a bit safer. But the elves never had that. I mean, they lived in the world where, enemies were roaming the woods, the
Yeah.
forests, the fields, whatnot. So it was
Flying
very,
around.
yeah. So the elves always saw that as their duty to free the lands from evil. And the dwarves never fully, and this is my my thing, which I, yes, they did, and they ate it and all that, but they were more, and that was maybe their nature, right? Because they were born
More
underground and
stone-hearted.
whatnot.
Yep.
Yeah, and they were born to withstand evil. It's literally in the lines I just read.
Yep.
So this is a very different point of view and standpoint against evil and what happened to the world.
Yeah.
um so I like what the elves did more than what the dwarves did, but I'm not
It's more
saying,
noble for sure.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the dwarves
yeah,
always viewed it as kind of like we should go help, especially if it's near our borders or if it's,
yes,
a
affecting our
town.
trade, and yeah,
Exactly. But at the end of
yeah,
the day, if it doesn't impact us at all
yeah,
and we
yeah,
think, the
yeah,
elves of blah 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 town could kind of handle it and withstand it, maybe they'll be
yeah,
diminished, but they'll be okay on their own.
yeah,
Or it could be a force so scary, we'll just shut our doors. We'll live
mhm,
in mines. We're, underground people, and
yeah,
we'll kind of like lock ourselves away from the rest of the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
But yeah, I can see that 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was always my thing. And as you said, the deeds of the elves a bit more noble. Like men, Numenoreans, like no, they had their, yes, the some of them, the six or seven or
Yeah.
whatever nine ships that escaped, then that's a different story. Elendil and all these people. But the later Numenoreans, like they didn't fight Sauron just to fight off evil in the lands. No, that was not the
Right.
purpose. They wanted to show their battle power. Um, yeah. So, do you have? I think we established now. They. It was always like this. Basically, there was never. Their story isn't like that,
Correct.
and it was. The foundation that was laid by God was there will be problems, and there were problems.
It played out like that. Exactly.
But as you said, then these few or many, however you want to see it, friendships are way more meaningful because it wasn't easy from the beginning. It was never easy. But then these friendships, like, Galadriel, like um, Elrond,
Celebrimbor.
Celebrimbor, all these people and these friendships, they are way more meaningful then, and which is really cool. And this is the notion and the essence of Tolkien, right?
Yeah.
Because, for men, it's easy to be friends, right? Because similar language, all that, there's no barrier, there's nothing. For dwarves and men, and for dwarves and elves, it is harder, but it makes the friendship, like Galadriel and Gimli and the gift she gave him and how he cherished this, right? This is so beautiful and way more meaningful. And this is what
Yeah.
Tolkien says, even people races that far apart can, create something. And he very often says this one sentence, and this is really cool. And this is just the Eregion example. Eregion became far stronger and Khazad-dûm far more beautiful than either would have done alone. And I think
Yeah,
this, depicts the.
because you have that friendly, even if it's unfriendly, there's
Yeah,
a like a rivalry almost.
yeah,
And you don't want the other one to become much greater than you. So yeah, you can appreciate what they're doing, but then you want to one up it. You want to do something
yeah,
cooler, build it greater, build it stronger.
yeah,
And like you said, those relationships that they do have that we hear about hit that much harder because we know
yeah,
about the ups and the downs that
yeah,
both dwarves and the elves go through. And
yeah.
Tolkien doesn't write words just to write words. Like they have
No
meaning behind them. So when
meanings.
he's
Yeah.
telling you about the friendship of these two very different races, even if it's
Hmm.
just two people in this group trying to build
Yeah.
this up,
Yeah.
it's like he's letting you know this is very important because
Yeah.
ideally for the free peoples, if you had the elves who could live for as long as they want
Yeah.
and dwarves who can live for hundreds of years, they
Yeah.
could be like that guiding force that always like lifts the people up if they were to come together and work things out. But
Yeah.
like regular people, sometimes you have people do bad things or get in the way or
Yeah.
mistake. Maybe somebody missed a payment on a jewel or something, I don't know, and it causes a little bit of a rift, and then it starts that downward spiral that
Yeah.
you have like the evil forces hoping that does happen,
Yeah.
bringing them back down. But ultimately, like all good stories, they'll work it out. They'll build
Yeah.
each other up, and both races will be better for the friendships that they get.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. Perfect. So, well, do you have any? Is that your last word? Do you like? So now, did I convince you that elves are also really cool and noble and needed and
So when I am on Discord or Reddit or Twitter, and people want to talk to me about elves, I always jump to like the lowest hanging fruit and the kinslaying and all the terrible things that they've done. But when you sit down with somebody and you want to talk about, yeah, here's some bad stuff that happened, but here's great examples of friendship and leadership and people being inspired by each other.
yeah,
It's hard not to appreciate what the elves have
yeah,
brought to the table. And
yeah.
when this video is over, until it airs, I'm gonna go on pretending like there is no opportunities for friendships between elves and dwarves. But yeah, when you break down the stories and you go over it, how can you not
Yeah,
appreciate all of this? I
yeah.
think that elves are not all bad, and for the most part, they're all pretty swell.
Good. Wise words.
Yeah.
Okay, my lovelies. Thank you so much for listening. Again, I'll link all the details to follow and where to follow. And I can only recommend the subreddit. I really love it. There's always something going on. Obviously, we all love Fellowship. He's so cool. I go there for all my scoops and yeah, for all the much needed updates about the show. But yeah, so definitely give this man, this dwarf, but wait, we haven't. So obviously, I'm an older, but what's your house? What's your clan?
We're one of the last Firebeards.
Ooh, so
W-
you're Blue Mountain guy.
And I'm kind of hoping that somehow Firebeards show up in the show in all their glory with a brighter beard than this.
Well, I mean, we know when Belegost and Nogrod fell, a lot of them migrated to Moria, to Khazad-dûm.
Hmm.
So there were lots of them left.
But
They
don't know
just
what they have
mingled.
the rights to or not. But that is like
Yeah,
that's my like fingers crossed hope is that we'll
yeah,
see other dwarvish clans
yeah, that would be cool.
also there.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
let's hope. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you, my lovelies. Till the next one. Bye bye.